I will ask the judges to introduce themselves, and then I'll ask you all to briefly introduce yourselves. And I am struggling to try to get back into the galley view. That's much easier to see everyone. And then we'll get started. I'm Gail O'Brien, and I'm an Uber judge. This is probably my 8th or 9th year as an Uber judge. I've been involved with IBEC for a little over 10 years. I'm delighted to see all of you, and I'm an executive coach with a corporate background in leadership and ethics and culture. And I welcome each of the judges identifying themselves. Jesse, do you want to start? And we'll go by rows.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Gail. I'm happy to. My name is Jesse. I'm the founder and president of AI for Good Asia. We're an international organization that implements AI projects and does AI research in order to make humanity better and try to implement projects that solve inequality. So we are doing a number of projects right now. One of the reasons I'm in Hanoi is we're using satellite data to map forests for conservation efforts. And on the research side, we are working on, as I was saying to Thomas before we logged in, we're working on a global research study to prove and showcase the operationalization of ethics, in particular in business, in terms of quantifying outcomes for the AI design process. And so that's going to be an international competition, and our partners are Microsoft and Crayon. And so I'm very keen to be here today and lend whatever advice and support. I think all of these topics are fantastic and very interesting to hear the innovative solutions that these teams have come up with, especially this one. This one is one that flies under the radar a little bit, and a little bit of cognitive dissonance around it. So I'm extremely excited to hear what you guys have come up with, and looking forward to your presentations. Thank you.
John?
My name is John Truslow, and I'm the Director of Ethics and Business Conduct for BAE Systems, which, since you guys are also in the New Hampshire area, is located just south of you in Nashua, New Hampshire. BAE Systems, for those of you that don't know, is the UK's largest defense company, and it is the 4th largest global defense company. And the part that's here in New Hampshire manufactures electronic components. So we make high integrity electronics. We employ about 16,000 people, about 7,000 of them are in the Massachusetts, New Hampshire area. And I've been with BAE for about 11 years now as their Director of Ethics. So it's nice to be with you, and I look forward to this.
Carl?
Well, hi there. I'm Carl Oliver. I'm retired from the Northrop Grumman Ethics Office. And I've been a judge for about 19 of these sessions, 19 years.
And Nuria?
Hi, my name is Nuria. I'm an ethics and compliance officer with more than 25 years of a professional career. The first 20 years mainly in tax and financial matters, and the last 5 years dedicated and really focused on ethics and compliance matters. I'm Spanish from Madrid, but living in The Hague in the Netherlands for the last 2 years for professional matters, but hopefully next summer I'm going back to my country, so I hope. And it's a pleasure for me to be here in this competition, so I'm really excited for listening to your presentation. Thank you.
And with that, we would love to hear from the team.
Hi, my name is Jessica Cacciola, and first I want to say thank you so much for having all of us. We're really pleased to be here with you. I am a junior at St. Anselm College and a communication major, and yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Catherine. I am a senior communication major from New Hampshire, but I am currently living in the state of Florida. and I have a minor in politics, and I'm really grateful to be here today. So thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Roy, and I'm a senior psychology major. Thank you for having us.
Oh, um, sorry about that. I have a stutter, and it's been challenging recently, and I'm a senior here, and crazy that is, I am graduating in now 30 days. So um thank you guys. Yeah, absolutely.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hunter Newsham. I'm a forensics major here at St. Anselm College, and I'm a junior.
Terrific. I'm going to tell you something that you already know, but it is the appropriate way to launch our presentation. It's why we're here. The instructions that you already have read and have followed include, in this part of the competition, you're taking on a fictional business identity and assigning a fictional business identity to the judges. Please make sure everyone knows who you are and who they are before you begin. And I believe I have a question because I don't know who you are. You've told us that we are the board of directors, but are you a consulting group? Are you part of the company? Who are you?
We are part of the company.
And what are you in the company?
We are the ethics board in the company.
Okay, so you're the ethics group in the company. Okay, great. Thank you. That's good to clarify. Let's see, where was I? You have 25 minutes with a 5-minute cushion to describe the legal, financial, and ethical dimensions of the problem and to recommend a solution that passes muster on all 3 counts. I will do the timer for 30, and I will have the rudeness, I'm sorry, of interrupting you wherever you are in 30 minutes if you're not done. So I'm assuming that you each will have your phone timer on so that you don't need me to have to do that. During the time, teams will be interrupted when uninterrupted when you are making your presentation. When you've finished, we, the judges, will ask you questions for 20 minutes. During the Q&A, both you and the judges stay in character. After the Q&A, the judges will give you feedback outside the role playing as ourselves. However, some important things to keep in mind is that the ethical aspects of your analysis are the most important part. They should be described in simple, practical, common sense fashion, using technical, philosophical terminology or basing your arguments on religion or theological grounds will be considered a serious weakness. During this presentation, every member of the team will have some sort of speaking role. And when you're ready, I will set my timer to 30 minutes to give you the 25 plus the 5 if you need it, and invite you to do the same. And please tell us when you're ready and I'll hit my button.
Good evening, Board of Directors. Today we'll be discussing the ethical violations of H&M. I am Jessica Cacciola, and presenting with me today are my coworkers.
Hi, I'm Catherine Cusack.
Hi, I'm Carrie Roy.
I am Connor O'Brien.
And my name is Hunter Nushe.
H&M, sustainable supergiant or exploitive enterprise. Fast fashion is a design, manufacturing, and marketing method focused on rapidly producing high volumes of clothing, garment production, and utilizes trend replication of low quality materials in order to bring inexpensive styles to the public. Our overall goal is to drive long-lasting positive change and improve living conditions by investing in people, communities, and innovative ideas. Fast fashion first started in the 1960s as young individuals idolized the idea of purchasing cheap clothing in order for their closets to stay up to date. Brands were forced to quickly rework the ways things had been running in the past to be able to keep up with the thousands of products that they were selling at a rapid speed. This is what led to textile mills developing across the world, which allowed for US and European countries to save millions of outsourcing their labor. Now, we first started opening a small store in 1947 in Sweden, and now we are a $27 billion company that operates over 5,000 stores worldwide and over 74 different countries. As you can see here, we have stores located throughout North America, Australia, and most of Europe, with a few in South America and Africa. According to this 2017 report, we hold 1.4% of the clothing industry market shares, reporting just under Nike, who holds the biggest share at 2.8%, and Adidas with 1.8%. We produce approximately 3 billion articles of clothing per year, and with our revenue being around 27 billion, the cost of each article of clothing averages to about $9 each. When we were first starting out, and for years after, we only produced 2 seasons a year, summer and winter. Now we are producing 52 seasons a year, meaning a new line drops weekly. This allows customers to have the ability to shop for a new wardrobe every week. While this may sound pleasing to have the option of getting new clothes every week, it is incredibly bad for the environment. Customers who wear their articles of clothing a handful of times before exchanging them for new ones are filling the landfills with pieces of clothing that will not break down for many years to come. The problem is that fast fashion business model of H&M is not sustainable because it exploits the environments, workers, and the consumer. The issue that needs to be addressed is not only how fast fashion is unsustainable, but also that the production line is exploiting their workers. Factory workers in Bangladesh are making 49 cents an hour. While this price may be slightly higher than what other factory workers make, it is still low enough to not only fail to provide enough income to support them and their family, but also violates Bangladesh labor laws. So what is sustainability? According to the International Institute for Sustainable Development, it is the ability to meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. As such, a sustainable business model should balance economic, environmental, and social considerations. As you can see here from this infographic, our sustainable vision is built on 3 components: fairness, change, and the environment. Despite our positive vision, our actions suggest otherwise and contribute to an unsustainable industry. Now my colleague Catherine will be presenting on the environmental problems of our fast fashion business model.
Hi, Jess. Thank you so much for your insight. The fashion industry is the second most polluting industry in the world after the oil industry. We come in second place globally for the production of these fast fashion clothing items. These clothing items are designed with very low grade materials, and they're very cheap, and they're designed to be discarded after only a few uses. And this is not environmentally friendly. Our pollution is harming the environment and people in the name of profit, which does not contribute to a balanced sustainability formula. While we have a recycling program that accepts used clothes from any clothing manufacturer, according to our brand representatives, only 0.1% of this is actually recycled into new textile fibers. Instead, 84% of it ends up in landfills or incinerators where it harms the environment. Our recycling program misleads the consumer to believe that their garments will be recycled when in reality, only a very small fraction of them actually are. This is a form of greenwashing, which is defined as the process of conveying a false message or providing misleading information about how a company is more environmentally sound. Once in landfills, some textiles, like synthetic ones, take over 200 years to decompose. These synthetic materials consist of things like nylon, polyester, and spandex, and these are staples within our clothing line. These contain microplastics, which are not biodegradable, and so when they enter the ocean, they release toxins and harm aquatic life. These synthetic materials are also made from fossil fuels, so they create atmospheric pollution during their production cycle as well. So the scientific knowledge of the effects of textile pollution are very well known and they're very well studied. But our company continues to use these cheap materials in the vast majority of our products in order to keep our profits high and keep our economic costs as low as possible. Even with the knowledge of the consequences of production and overproduction, in 2019, we were sitting on $4.3 billion worth of unsold clothes, while we churned out an additional 3 billion garments that year. Our unsustainable business model means that there is an overproduction of clothing that needs to be discarded of. Some of this excess clothing is used to fuel power plants in Sweden, where it releases toxic fumes into the atmosphere, degrades air quality, and this compounds the effects of atmospheric pollution. Further, the discarding of this waste into landfills harms the environment, and it also disproportionately affects low-income and minority communities where this is dumped. This is an issue of environmental racism, as the rights of these communities have been overlooked or just blatantly disregarded. We have a responsibility not to harm the environment or the people within these communities. We also have a responsibility not to mislead our consumer to believe that they're buying a product that is more sustainable than it actually is. And so while the production of the raw material creates environmental issues, so does the production of the finished product. The bleaching and dyeing process is very water intensive, and it uses hazardous chemicals. These hazardous chemicals are known to cause diseases in humans like cancer and birth defects, death of aquatic, terrestrial, and aerial life. It can disrupt agricultural systems, poison drinking water, along with numerous other issues. So while we do use something called screen chemistry, which aims to limit the number of hazardous chemicals at the design stage, which was part of our promise to secure zero discharge of hazardous chemicals by 2020. According to our 2020 sustainability report, we came up short of our promise. So the unethical environmental issues of our fast fashion clothing brand knowingly degrade ecosystem functioning, harm humans and the environment, all while manipulating the consumer to believe that they're buying a product that is more sustainable than it actually is. And so in our 2020 sustainability report, we state that our aim is for all of our products to be made from recycled or other sustainably sourced materials by 2030. But we have gotten into ethical trouble for what actually constitutes as sustainable because we market ourselves as being sustainable, but our business model right now is anything but. And so while there are no laws currently regarding what a clothing manufacturer needs to do to state that it is becoming sustainable, it is still an ethical violation for us to lie or to knowingly mislead our consumer. And so while we do promise to drive long-lasting and meaningful change within our mission statement, these promises mean nothing if they're broken or if they're just used to make more money. Further, there's this issue of environmental injustice, since people in these developing countries get a disproportionate share of the environmental burden, while we are removed from all legal and financial liability of the issue because we outsource the manufacturing of our product to third-party sources. It is not sustainable to continue to churn out this much product. And by greenwashing our products, we are distancing ourselves from the extremely harmful impacts of the fast fashion business model. And so while we haven't faced a legal or financial challenge to date, we do face an ethical one from our consumers, from activists, and from our exploited workers. Our fast fashion clothing brand with our false sustainable marketing harms the environment, harms the producer, and harms our consumer. We have a duty not to harm the planet or people in the name of a profit. We need to be held accountable for our actions, which is not possible if we continue to outsource the manufacturing of all of our product to third-party sources, and if we continue to greenwash our products. And now my colleague Carrie is going to tell you about your ethical duties and obligations as a business.
Thank you, Catherine. The current generation has moral obligations to their descendants to provide them with a clean planet. By harming the environment now, it directly harms future generations. If pollution and destroying the environment continue, future generations will have a lack of access to clean water, lack of access to natural resources, and decreased air quality. These things allow for the current generation to live fairly easy lives. Not only do we have an obligation to not harm others, but we have an obligation to bring about good things with our actions. Thus, even if destroying the environment was not a detriment to others, we would still have a duty to do good things. We owe future generations clean water, clean air, and a healthy environment. Without these things, life would be made explicitly harder. This would create and impose unnecessary burdens and thus be unjust and unethical. Global warming and other environmental issues affect the poor unproportionately as well. As stated earlier, we have a duty to one another to bring about good things and not impose unnecessary burdens. By continuing to harm the environment, it places certain groups at a disadvantage compared to other groups, which is unjust and immoral. The environment also has intrinsic value, which means that it has its own right outside that of humanity. Nature has beauty that is good in and of itself. Destroying this beauty is destroying a natural good that the environment holds. Furthermore, harming the environment corrupts those doing the destruction. By knowingly harming the environment, the virtue of those doing the harm is broken down, such that these people are no longer living virtuous and moral lives. Thus, harming the environment is not virtuous or moral. Destroying the environment also has implications in the medical field. Today, 80% of leading prescriptions are based on natural sources, including treatments to do with cancer. Millions of people also rely on medicine that comes solely from the environment, such as natural treatments like herbal therapies, aromatherapies, and similar practices. These practices aim to treat a number of diseases, including Alzheimer's disease, anxiety, pain, and nausea. In summary, we have a duty to provide future generations with a clean planet, and we have an obligation to bring about good things with our actions. We also have an obligation to avoid doing harm to those who will be disproportionately affected, like those who live in more poorer tropical regions. By doing harm, it destroys our virtue and makes us immoral people. We also have to ensure that natural medicines are available for those who need it. Now my colleague Connor will discuss our solution.
All right, thank you, Carrie. So our solution basically is to by 2022 construct and also manage a manufacturing factory, and with this our business practices will be much more transparent and also sustainable. And in the short run, this will raise costs, but in the long run, this is a necessary investment for the future of our company. So throughout multiple surveys, Generation Z clearly shows that that there's a great call for more sustainable production, and right now with our manufacturing model, it is very challenging to actually clearly see our green practices. And besides reusable cotton, our annual report does not mention many environmental factors. Back in the mid 2010s, Nike definitely caught some serious pressure from their customers based on their unmoral manufacturing practices, and Nike made a massive change and is very now transparent with their manufacturing processes. And during these changes, Nike's profits have stayed very steady from $3 billion to just short of $5 billion. And with this, we though as a company can do better than Nike by actually managing our very own manufacturing plants. And with that, I am sending it to my colleague Hunter Newsman. Thank you.
Hello. So you might be wondering, what are the pros, cons of operating and owning the H&M factory that we will be hopefully building in the future? Well, first off, this would be a huge stride in the fast fashion industry. Fast fashion, most of our competition, they use third parties and other agencies to outsource their work, their manufacturing and production. So by taking a leadership role, we would be the first to own our own factory. By doing so, we would be kind of changing the groundwork of the industry and being able to deal with these ethical issues that arise due to the unsustainability that our industry faces. So another one of the pros is owning and operating our own manufacturing facility that guarantees safer working conditions and sustainable practices going forward, as we ourselves are in control of the facility, the workers, any materials that are being used at the facility, any manufacturing processes that are there. So we have oversight over all of these things. And due to that, we are able to control every aspect of the clothing, and therefore are able to control the process and make sure it fits what we need to do to improve our ethical, make sure that it fits what we need to do to solve our ethical issues. And then another pro, great press. Nike has been touted as the ethical gold star of the fashion industry for a long time, and just for being transparent, just for talking about where they outsource their work to. They themselves do not actually own any of the factories where their work is being done, where their clothes are being produced. They just are very transparent about their manufacturing practices and where they do their business. This would be taking that even a greater step by being not just transparent, but like fully owning and operating it. So this would be a huge game changer for the fast fashion industry, for us as a company, and for the fashion industry as a whole, and fast fashion. So some of the cons are that short term, it will cut into profits. It is costly, of course, to construct and build a factory, as well as own and operate a factory, especially when you want that factory to meet ethical and environmental standards. Cutting corners obviously is ethically unacceptable. And this is one of the reasons why we're going in this direction, and why we feel we have to go in this direction, not just for ourselves, but for our future generations. And so it would cost some money, but as a multi-billion-dollar industry, company, not industry, we can certainly afford that. This would be initially decrease our profits. However, this is not a short-term move. We would be looking to build one factory now, and then in the future, expand that into multiple factories and facilities going forward. This is definitely a long-term solution, not one that is just in the short term. So we are willing to see an initial decrease in profits for that long-term increase in profits as we go forward. So one of the biggest thing about owning and operating our own facility was that we would be able to tighten the environmental standards and make sure that we are not destroying the environment as our industry currently is. By owning and operating our own factory, we will be able to use organic cotton and recycled cotton and ensure that that is what is going on. We will be able to make sure that we are in compliance with the zero discharge of hazardous chemicals and manufacturing restricted substance list that was mentioned earlier by my coworker, Catherine. Then we will also be able to use, by constructing our own factory, we'll be able to incorporate using renewable energy sources into that. We would hope to be able to use wind, solar power when we construct this factory, in hopes to offset any sort of negative environmental effects that our creation of clothing has. And third, we would look to partner with Fashion Revolution, which is an organization, that focuses on fast fashion, and the damages to the environment and to human rights that happen due to this industry. So the factory construction obviously would cost a little bit of money. So we're looking at somewhere around upwards of $20 million to build and construct this factory from the ground up. We would look to be using environmentally friendly construction. This would be a long-term payoff solution. This would not be in the short term, as constructing a factory is, of course, not cheap, not nowadays. And especially when you're looking to do it environmentally in such an environmentally friendly way. However, by constructing our own factory, we'll be able to incorporate, again, reuse renewable energy like solar, which pays for itself in an estimated 7 to 20 years. So in the long term, it would be beneficial for us, not just ethically, but financially, to construct and operate our own factory. Almost as a bonus to helping to clamp down on environmental standards, we would also be able to improve the human rights conditions for any of our employees, because currently fast fashion organizations outsource to companies which often run sweatshops with terrible conditions for their employees. So not only would be taking a stand against the environmental damages and ensuring that the future generations of our children have a planet that is livable, survivable, and a place that is not hostile towards them, but our own employees would have fair working wages and living conditions. Now, this may open us up to more liability. However, that is something that we are willing to face, as this is something that we must face ethically. Therefore, it's something that we must do and is an added bonus to helping us tighten up our environmental standards. So we would also be going after one of our biggest competitors, Nike. This move, by having our own factories, owning, operating them, would end up causing us to have to charge a little bit more for our products, as environmentally sustainable product creation is slightly more costly. However, by doing so, we would be hoping to move up the socioeconomic food chain of consumer, as consumers with more money are more aware of the environmental damages that fast fashion provides. So therefore, they're more conscientious with their choices. By doing this, by being an industry leader, by having our own factory and then building more, we'd be able to climb up the food chain. So you say, we would be looking to take away from Nike's 2.8% of share unit sales, and hopefully even surpass Adidas with only 0.4% more than us. So this would be a long-term solution that we would be looking to. We are willing to, pay a little bit more to move up the food chain, so to say, in the industry and become a leader. We definitely have the funds available to deal with this, seeing as not last year, the operating profit was over $2 billion so we definitely have the financial ability currently to make these moves happen and make these changes happen and really become a leader in the industry by helping to shut down the environmental damage that's happening over time. And therefore, so again, in conclusion, by taking a larger role at our production, by owning and operating our own facility after constructing it with renewable energy, with tighter standards, with our oversight directly from us at the company instead of through third-party agencies, we'll be able to become an industry leader. We'll be able to ensure that our ethical responsibility, not just to the environment, but also to human rights and to future generations, is fulfilled. And that is all we have time for. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you very much. I will invite my other board colleagues to go first in asking questions. And Jesse, will you start? And can we get rid of the your slides? Thank you. So we can see each other. Thank you very much.
Great. First, thank you to our ethics board at HSM for providing us with that presentation. I think you did a good job of showing us the problems and what we are doing wrong. And you gave us one solution for backward integrating our factories. My question is, what other innovative solutions did you come up with and when you were trying to give us a recommendation? I'd like to hear some of the other options that were that you had thought of beforehand. Thanks.
We looked at a handful of options. One of those options was, again, following Nike directly in Nike's footsteps and simply being more transparent about our manufacturing process. That one, however, simply being transparent isn't necessarily enough, especially because the industry is so unsustainable. We are only second behind the oil, as Catherine pointed out. So just being transparent about it like Nike is not doing enough for ourselves and for the future generations. We also looked at possibly purchasing pre-built factories that were already the factories that we may already be working with, going and buying those out. However, due to the fact that those are already constructed in large cities or areas where there may be certain zoning issues, if we want to expand or improve those facilities, that again would end up causing more hassle than need to be. We thought about, again, improving those structures, purchasing them, but it seems like the best way to move forward is almost like a clean slate. That way we are truly able to hit all the boxes when dealing with these ethical issues by taking control from the ground up, quite literally by helping to oversee construction and operation of the factory from the very beginning, since the first bricks hit the ground.
Well, as the board, I think we have some issues with the risks involved, especially the legal ones, because right now we are protected. And also maybe some concerns around how this would actually be considered and marketed and what kind of exposure this would give. I mean, we have some real concerns around what happened to Nike in terms of the pressure that the consumers have made on them to change their factory practices. And what if consumers are going to be demanding that kind of pressure on us, especially with the greenwashing that you so were pointed out and the negative media attention that we've been getting. And so I guess it would be nice to see some more innovative solutions, like perhaps, invest in R&D for more sustainable fabrics, bio, organic dyes that we could do. These things then we could sell to our other industry players, maybe putting a compliance officer in the sites instead of backward integrating and making a huge investment, see if we can actually make a difference that way. Or perhaps, maybe even taking a whole innovative model where we would, have a rent the runway type of approach where people could rent the clothes for 4 days or 8 days and then bring it back. And we would, be able to innovate the whole, fast fashion model. But yeah, it would be nice to see a few different options for us to choose from.
Thank you. John, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I see maybe I've lost my video. My audio? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So well, I'll tell you, I'll go a different direction. I think what Jesse's done is exactly right. And but I'll go a different way and see if I can get you to clarify maybe one of your arguments. Okay. And so on one of your slides, you had up the phrase, we have a responsibility to not pollute. And I feel like that gets kind of to the core of your argument. So I want to kind of break that apart or ask you to break it apart. So I've got two questions, right? First of all, who is we? That's my first question. Are you talking about we as people, as citizens of the world? Or are you talking about we as the corporation? So that's, or somebody else. Who is we? And then when you say that we have a responsibility, who do we have a responsibility to? So if you would just clarify that argument, then I think that might help me understand better, why I should spend $20 million.
So we, as people that have a knowledge of the environmental consequences of pollution, have the responsibility not to pollute, since we do know the hazardous consequences. And do you mind just repeating the second part of that question quickly as well?
So sorry, I didn't quite catch so you're saying we is just we as individual people, we as citizens of the world, is that the response?
Well, we as a company that has the knowledge of the consequences of pollution and knows the scientific consequences of pollution has a right not to pollute.
Okay.
We have the duty not to pollute.
Okay, so the corporation has the responsibility. And then if you then just flesh out, so the corporation, we have that responsibility to who? To the environment, to our shareholders, to other citizens, to help me understand who the responsibility is to.
To anyone that is harmed by pollution or anything that is harmed. So not just people. People have rights, yes, but so does the environment. The environment has intrinsic rights as well. So we have the duty not to harm or exploit any bodies, not just humans, but any bodies that have rights. So our stakeholders have rights, but so does the environment, and so do people in these developing countries. Our exploited workers have rights, and so do our consumers.
But then what you're saying is there are trade-offs, right? There's multiple partners that you've just described. There is a trade-off there. And I think what you're saying is that if there's any harm to any of them, then we must not pollute in any way. So I think what you're saying is then there must not be any pollution by our company at any time, because any harm violates that responsibility. Is that correct?
I would say that we right now have the responsibility to minimize the amount of harm in any way that we have that's possible. So there are scientific ways to minimize the amount of harm. For example, for hazardous chemicals, there are ways to, in the dyeing process, that are a little bit more expensive, but you can use like microbiomes, or you can use coffee or different types of natural dyes that are a little bit more costly. And these are being invented right now by some startup companies. So they are a little bit more costly, but they do significantly diminish the amount of harm done. And I think that amount of harm that is diminished is worth the economic cost for the risk mitigation of the environmental cost.
So you're sure that $20 million is a less cost than the harm that we are currently causing?
Well, yes, as of right now, we have put $180 million into the research and development of more environmentally friendly solutions and different types of scientific ways of mitigating our pollution. So this would be included within those costs. So we do things like screen chemistry, but we also have different standards that we have promised to adhere to, but we have broken those, such as the zero discharge of hazardous chemicals. And we have like a conscious line that does use sustainably sourced cotton rather than regular cotton, which does help without increasing the cost that we charge the consumer. It does significantly decrease the amount of water pollution and the pesticides used. So it mitigates a lot of the environmental issues and the human rights issues. So there are ways that you can diminish the human rights issues and diminish the environmental impacts as well, without increasing the amount that we're spending on these technologies. And we have put a lot of money into some new technologies, like green machines that break down the textiles after they've been discarded.
Thank you.
Nuria?
Okay, first of all, thank you for the presentation. I have two questions. One of them is that we have a problem. We pollute a lot because of the way we are manufacturing our clothes. So you think that the solution is to construct a factory in order to produce with no soap pollution? But are we thinking about reducing the number of clothes we produce? Because now we are producing clothes every week, so 52 weeks per year. We are producing a lot of clothes, and a lot of these clothes are not sold. So we are putting the clothes in the garbage or trying to incinerate or something like that. But are you thinking about reduce the way we produce the clothes, not the way we manufacture that, but the way or the number of clothes we produce, because this way maybe we can reduce the pollution? Did you make the comparison between both solutions, or you think that the best one is to construct the factory and try to reduce the pollution like that?
So we would be looking to not just cut down on pollution due to manufacturing by constructing the factory. We would also be looking to cut back on how many weeks we produce per clothing. Again, as Jess mentioned, fashion used to be just summer, winter. That would all you produce, two seasons. Since then, fast fashion has grown to 52 weeks. So we would be looking to cut back at our factories and our newly constructed factory to produce less, so as to not generate as much excess waste. Therefore, cutting back on the excess clothing that we have and being more environmentally sustainable that way. So we did consider that, and we have looked at that.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is related to the construction of the factory. You mentioned that it's going to imply an improvement in the human rights. This is related to the employees in the factory. They are going to have better labor conditions, or what are you exactly?
So by owning and operating the factory, we would therefore be taking on more liability for the employees' well-being. Currently, H&M does not really have any liability as to how their workers are treated at third-party factories that we may hire out to. By owning and operating our own facility, our own manufacturing facility, we would therefore be far more liable and held to a higher standard, which would benefit the employees of said factory and their families as well. Although it would be an increase in liability, that's something that we as a company have no issue taking on, especially as a company that's looking to be incredibly ethical and be an ethical leader in the field.
Okay, great, thank you.
Carl?
Gail, your audio is very, very soft for some reason, don't know why. Barely hear you. For the team, I don't like to focus on the $20 million cost, but I do have to ask, is that estimate like an architect's estimate for the building?
So we actually had a fellow family member who recently constructed a manufacturing facility in the US, actually, where it would be more expensive to produce a manufacturing facility, and it cost that company $20 million for a 400,000 square foot facility. We are basing our estimates off that. Overseas, we are looking at a less costly building process, obviously due to fluctuating global exchange rates and such. However, with $2 billion in over $2 billion in operating profits last year and an 11% growth in sales, the financial side of it is something that we as an ethical board were not too concerned with when counting it up against human rights and the rights of the environment.
Okay, that reinforces my concern that the number may be very low in terms of the change that you're asking us to make, because there was also be costs for recruiting employees, for staffing the facility, for training the managers and that sort of thing, and implementing the logistics and the supply chain to run the place. I think the 20 million is a very, very low estimate, but I'm not sure that the decision should be made based on the cost so much as on the value that it adds to the company. Our company is, its model is to see what other people design and then reproduce those designs in low-cost materials and get them out to the market in a hurry. It seems to me if we have to raise the cost of our materials, it's going to bar us from reaching the large bottom part of the market that we've been targeting. So we're changing our model to go for the high end of the market or something like that, and has economic impacts I can't quite imagine. Have you given any thought to where our market role would end up? Would it be still at the low end of the market, or the high end, or in the middle, or where would we be?
So in that regard, although we would be in fact looking to shift up the socioeconomic kind of food chain of our consumers, we'd be looking to go into and kind of steal away a portion of Nike and Adidas's customer base, who are part of the higher end of the market. We would be moving upwards, so to say, by shifting our economics and our production. So in that regards, we have considered that, and we have seen that, and we definitely believe we could pull off such a move, and that in the long term, it would be profitable for the country moving forward, for the company, excuse me, not country, moving forward, to shift our market, our target consumer upwards more so into, let's say, a higher socioeconomic class.
And with that too, by marketing our changes, like new customers, like then like would be drawn to our company as well, driving up our sales numbers and also revenue numbers.
Which of our corporate values would help guide us in making this decision?
I'm sorry, you kind of cut out. Would you mind repeating the question?
Carl?
Could you repeat that? We lost it for a second.
I'll jump in here because we can't hear Carl. I'll say his question was, which of our corporate values is going to guide us in this decision?
So part of our mission statement is to drive long-lasting positive change. And as I've talked about in my ethics presentation, the long-term consequences of pollution can completely annihilate communities, both here and abroad. So obviously that is one big part of our mission statement that would be driving us to start changing our ethics and maybe reconsidering our business practices.
We are out of time. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
good.
yeah,
Just
we
want to
can hear
make
you
sure.
just fine now.
We are out of time with the questions, and I think it's more important at this point to move to the feedback. If anyone has any concerns about that, we can deal with more questions at the end, but I'll start. I think that you took on a very ambitious project, a very important project. I love how Carrie brought up at the end what I was hoping you would bring up at the beginning. Jessica, you talked about the mission statement. You have a perfect setup, I think, to talk about the changes that H&M needs to make by virtue of the mission statement to drive long-lasting positive change and improve living conditions by investing in people, communities, and innovative ideas. We're talking about trust here. We're talking about credibility. We're talking about culture. We're talking about a whole lot of things that, based on the mistakes that H&M has made, you have a context of reputation. I think the reason that you couldn't answer Carl's question about values is I looked up to try to find out what H&M's values were. I couldn't find anything that popped up to say what the values are. So obviously I didn't do the in-depth work that you did. If you came up with any values that they say they stand for, I think Carl's point was that you want to integrate that into part of the authenticity of how the organization operates. I care a lot about feedback as it relates to tomorrow, both the 10-minute and the 90-second. And I I have a couple of suggestions before I open it up to my wonderful colleagues. You have a difficult role for yourself when you call yourself an ethics board. It suggests that somehow you're on a peer level with the C-suite, and that, in my experience, is never the case unless you bring in outside monitors. So when you make a case for how the company should change, words matter, and it matters in terms of persuasion. It also matters in terms of connection. And when you talk about exploited workers and exploited environment, you're talking, in this role that you have, you're being paid by this company. So you might want to think, your points are very well taken. You might want to think about reframing the language that is more us and more focused on what the mission statement is, to get them to this is going to happen in business. I mean, in any environment that you go into, those of us angry at how our employers operate don't get very far, sadly, if we come off as activists and antagonists. What matters as employees, I think, is our responsibility to help the company change for the better for everything. And so it's just a tone kind of thing that I think is going to be important. And I've got more to say, but I'm much more interested right now in my colleagues giving you feedback. And then what we'll do is we'll have you ask questions, but if you have questions about the feedback, don't hesitate to, ask us. But I wanted to make sure you got as much information as you could. And so with that, Jesse, do you want to start again?
Yeah, I'll just add really quickly to what you said there, Gail. I couldn't agree more. It's really important that for the purpose of this presentation, especially tomorrow, that you take that role on seriously of who you are. And an ethics board is in the company. So watch your language with the you and we's, and you're not going to convince the board by scolding them of everything we're doing wrong. So just make sure that, your tone the next day, just to add to what Gail said, but also focus on the ethics a bit more. Like actually, like in terms of how you frame it, is intangible, how we treat others. Are we treating others appropriately? Like in plain language, how does it fit with, like you said, our mission statement, which Gail so perfectly said is supposed to be driving what we do, but we're not in line with that. And how are we doing harm to others? I mean, frame that, and how does that specifically work within the company framework? So I think I have a lot to say on the business side of the presentation and the alternatives but I think it's helpful to focus on the ethics for your next presentation. So that's what I'll just add quickly.
John, do you want to say something?
Sure. I also, what I wrote down on my notes was ethics has to show solidarity with the business or they're not going to be heard, right? You have to demonstrate when you're in the ethics capacity that that your company is not in business to solve all the world's human rights problems. We are not in business to fix environmental problems. That's not why we started the business. And unless you show some solidarity with why the company exists in the first place, they won't listen to what may be more important considerations about how they accomplish that mission. So I think I'm mirroring what Gail and Jesse said by saying you got to show some empathy with the people that are listening to you. And that empathy, I'll give you an example. My second point is, I think it would be fair for you to explain the cost, just the bare cost of what would it cost if your company just came into compliance with the laws and the rules. Okay, if that's all they did, that should be your baseline of where you've got to go. And then you've got to then make your argument for, if this is the baseline, we have to come into compliance, we have to come into environmental compliance, we have to come in compliance with labor laws in the countries where we do business. That's the bare minimum. And now I need to explain to you why we're going above and beyond that at the cost of our business, right? So you're going beyond it, but you're showing that, yes, we are going to hurt. I understand that what you want to do may be the bare minimum, but now you're making a slightly different argument because at least you've acknowledged that there are certain interests that that company has that are being met, but you would like to go a step further. And then I think my last point, and I'll stop, is that I think I'm mirroring what Jesse said, is that I think you clearly care a lot about the ethical aspects of your arguments. You care deeply about it, but you make a lot of moral assertions. You say that it's wrong, and you say that it's corrupt, you say that it's exploitive, but you haven't shown me why any of those things are true. And so when you're making your arguments, you got to put something behind just the statements. You got to give some reasons behind those statements. So I don't think you're wrong. You're asking me to spend a bunch of money more than what I want to, that's going to harm my business, and something needs to be behind the assertions. So anyway, that's my feedback.
Nuria?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I agree with Jesse and Kael that this project is very ambitious, but very important too. I think that what you try to explain is that we have to change our model of manufacturing, which is not a pity, it's a big project. So I think that you should focus on why we are going to do that. And we are going to do that because we are ethics. We know that we have a problem. We know that we are polluting the world. We know that we have to change our model. We have to change the way that we produce our clothes. And as we are ethicals, we have to do this big project. Be focused on that, why we are going to do this, and what are the ethical implications of this change. The world is going to be better if we do this. The conditions of the people, of the employees that we have, are going to be better too. So try to be focused on that and not on other things, because it's very, very difficult to manage all this project.
Thank you. Carl?
The company has 7 published values that I can find. The 5th one speaks directly to the issue that you're trying to address. It's a foundation for your argument. The title of it is Cost Conscious. Being cost conscious is about keeping an eye on expenses and making smart, sustainable choices. Even in the small everyday things, we look for ideas and solutions that bring value to our business while avoiding careless spending. So you're trying to bring value to the business through this expense. The best way to invest in the future is to take good care of our people, our products, our customers, and our planet. So H&M is already on this road. You're here showing them how they can improve their path in getting to the destination they're already trying to get to. You're showing them an opportunity.
I just want to add to that, and Jesse may have a better suggestion, but seems to me that when you own a factory, you own a culture. Now, the cost of the factory may be far too much. So that opens up possibilities that I think some people have already suggested, of whether, I can't remember what Apple did when they ran into major problems. I don't think they built factories. I think they found better people to manage the factories. They did a variety of things. And if any of the judges know specifically what they are, then please.
They use their leverage to put pressure on their suppliers. Foxconn was from out of Taiwan, was one of the major ones, and so they use their position and power to put leverage on to make changes. And that was a really important part. And then what they did is they actually used that change in order to market it, and they leveraged the change that they did in a very real way. For example, we have a greenwashing problem at in our business, which you so pointed out. But how are we going to? We have trust issues with our clients. So even if we go back and we fix the factory, how do we communicate that without fixing the trust issues that we have with our customers at the same time? And so I think that, building a factory, could solve the problems if everything was in place. But there's a reason why we have those billions of dollars. It's because our business model is low costs. And so asking us to change our entire business model may be a bit much for us to swallow right away. So my suggestion, from a business standpoint, would be to do what Gail is suggesting, perhaps, and maybe do some incremental changes, put a compliance officer, put some pressure on them, try to make some changes, meet those bare minimums first, as John was saying, and then suggest why it has to be profitable and not just ethical. They kind of go hand in hand, and asking us to change our business model is quite difficult.
But I think what you have for tomorrow is only 10 minutes.
Right.
That's all you've got to make your case. You have to assume a couple of things. One of those things is what you did was good enough that the company wanted to hear more from you. So even though you'll be seeing one person tomorrow instead of 3 or 4 of us, you need to imagine that you're back into the environment, and the company wants to know more, and they want you to only focus on the ethics piece. So leave out the other pieces and think about, you've done great research, and you're not going to be able to use your slide presentation or a video, but hopefully you've internalized the power of that. Figure out what it is that would make a compelling case that is doable, that is exactly, as you think of the spectrum of the ideas that you had, in 20 minutes, you'd love 20 minutes. In 10 minutes, you'll only be able to make a couple of points, maybe 3 at the very most. And you're going to need to substantiate them based on the feedback you've gotten from us and what you know as well. And then the more specific you are, and the more you tie it back to the company's values, and thank you, Carl, for finding what I didn't quickly find. That is critical. You may want to tell them where you found it. Did you all find the values? Because I'm thinking if you found
we have them.
We have them.
Okay. Not referring to them is not using a tool that is critically important when you're trying to talk, even though many companies, as we know, have values that they don't really do much with. Once you say you have them, you're stuck, you're accountable for it. There's an obligation an expectation that people will judge you by what you said. And you've got a great mission statement, and you've got things that you can support that the company has already said, so that you want in that 10 minutes and this is all practice because you're all going into business or some organizational environment in which ethics is going to be important. And this is the whole point of this exercise tomorrow, is to give you practice speaking truth to power, speaking in a way that allows you to collaborate with creating better suggestions, which outsiders can only do through the force of, threats. You're internal and you have the company's best interests at heart. And I think that's, really important. We'll talk about the 90 seconds in a minute, but I want to see if any of the judges have additional comments, or if you all have questions of us related to what we've said. It's not that we didn't like your presentation, it's that we want you to do as well as you can with what we know the expectations are of making your case in a way that is easy for leaders to hear. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, absolutely. That makes a ton of sense. And we appreciate your feedback a lot. And we're going to be sure to definitely work it in for tomorrow. It's going to be a late one tonight for everybody. So the feedback is fantastic. And
Yeah, but think about what you already have, Hunter. I mean,
Right,
think about
right,
what you've already
right.
done. You're not starting. You're simply, it's a mindset
Refining.
shift, perhaps.
Yeah. I think you guys bring up a lot of fantastic points that we're definitely going to take to heart and maybe refine the 10-minute. Of course, we don't have the as much time as today. So it'll definitely be interesting, but I don't know, does anybody have questions? I don't think we have any questions right now.
One of the things I want to say about the 90-second is that it's really important that you follow the directions. I have seen more good teams not do well in the 90-second because they didn't understand that the heart of the whole exercise is really to support you when you go into organizations. We all know that organizations aren't perfect. We know that there's lots of issues and problems that come up, and often when they come up, it's uncomfortable for people to say anything because they don't want to lose their job or they don't want to get in trouble. And so this scenario is a pretty safe one. I'm trying to think of it. You're at a meeting in which people are discussing an issue and no one's brought up ethics. And hopefully all of you are going to be, as IBEC alums in the future, you're going to be comfortable raising what you can say in 90 seconds that would allow you to not let this issue, whatever the issue is, and you may well want to take an issue related to H&M, you probably already have, but think about what's really impactful that gets people thinking, because that's the beginning of an ethics process. Judges, what else do you have to say in the time that we have left that would be helpful to them?
Oh, I'll just add one quick thing. Yet, organizations are collections of humans, and so you'll be faced with situations where there's pressure, where you're uncomfortable to speak, and you have to break through that. So you have to. So I guess my advice would be think of these next phases, these next two, the 10-minute and the 90-second, as that role play, that real, embrace that opportunity to say, like, one day I'm going to be in a company and I'm going to be in a situation where I need to be brave and I need to actually be able to connect with another human that may not necessarily think the same way, different values, attitudes, opinions, and beliefs. So try to take this as an opportunity to imagine yourself in that role and what you would do if you were in that role. Thank you.
Yeah, I have nothing else. You guys clearly put a lot of work into it. I think I think you'll do great tomorrow. If you do everything that Gail tells you to do, then you're going to be fine. Right.
It's just after a lot of years of experience, having seen great teams not necessarily advance the goal that they wanted, which is to get the recognition of all the hard work that you've had. We're just trying to literally throw at you, hopefully, and you seem to be good at catching ideas that will resonate. Obviously, you'll do what makes sense, but we just want you to have the pressure that it takes to put together what you put together. And all of you did a really good job of presenting. There was passion, and there was all kinds of qualities that are wonderful for having an impact. We just want to set you up in an environment where you understand the realities that you're going into, and that can make you more effective. And you'd probably like.
Your presentation skills were excellent. I was checking for one thing in particular, and it's one that I have trouble with, and you can see it right now. I forget to look into the lens, so I lose eye contact with my audience. But it appeared to me that you were looking into the lens quite well and had good eye contact with the audience. So I'll practice on my side. You keep doing what you're doing on yours.
Thank you all. If you don't have any other questions, you probably, have other things you want to do right now, but just know how much we appreciated your work and the wonderful content that you have, that you will find a right way to reorganize into 10 minutes, because any team doing 30 has a challenge when they try to take all of that, and you're not taking all of it, you're only taking the ethics piece of it. And that's important too. Don't waste a second trying to talk about business or other kinds of things, because what we are being asked to do here is make a strong ethical case. And I know that you'll do really well tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
This might be